say for the maturation of the compassionate male, because I think it's already a birthed quality, right, in the world. But for that to mature, it takes courage and building your creative muscles. Basically builds your courage and your strength, because you're constantly pressing yourself to go into the unknown, to explore, to discover, to experiment, to fail, to be resilient, to come back, to try, to do all of those things until you manifest, right? So creativity is really how we build our courage.
Good day, this is Clay Boykin, and I'm in search of the new compassionate male. And it's a search that includes both women and men. And I'm thrilled today to have with me Brecia, Kralovic-Logan. And you and I met from our work with the Charter for Compassion. And quite an interesting story, background, and so many things going on. And I want to hear all about your work with something called Women's Woven Voices. I want to hear all about that. I want to hear about your work with the Charter, whatever other programs you've got. I want to hear about men and compassion and your thoughts on that, what you see happening, what you see ought to be happening. I just want to hear it all. So with that, where would you like to start?
Yeah, the Women's Woven Voices project is really currently my focus, and everything sort of revolves around that. So, well, and it's really my way of, you said we met through the Charter for Compassion, and it's really sort of my way of shining the compassion light in the world, and my connection with the Charter, because I'm a Charter partner through the project and with the women and girls sector. Great. Well, Clay, essentially, just to say a little bit about my background, I consider myself primarily an artist, actually. This is my whole adult life. I've been an artist, an arts educator, involved in the arts in one way or another. And with that, creativity is just a passion of mine. And I went ahead and, got certified as a creativity coach, which is somebody who, it's really like a creative life coach. You have the same kind of training that you would have as a creative life coach, but it's, there's also, in addition to that, there's coaching people through their creative process, which everybody has a creative process. So that has been just an incredible joy to me to be a champion of creativity, creative action, creative thought in the world.
So let me ask you then, you talk about the creative process. Do you work with oils and watercolors, and what medium do you work with?
Well, I'm so happy that you asked that question, because I primarily work in fiber. With anything that has to do with fiber. And so that's why it's the Women's Woven Voices project. And you can see behind me some of the panels of the tapestry from the project.
I was going to comment on those. Those are beautiful.
Yeah. I started working, with all different kinds of art materials, at a really early age, and really was drawn to the things that had to do with textiles. So, knitting and crocheting and dyeing and printing on fabric and stitching and embroidering, anything that had to do with textiles. So I kind of have, the word interweave and woven, we use that a lot now. And I actually think of it as what we're doing right now is we're going to be interweaving, the qualities of the compassionate masculine and the compassionate feminine, in human beings, right? That's what this is all about. So,
I love that.
So weaving has this very archetypal feeling to it. There's the weaving goddesses in every culture, and every culture had to figure out a way to create cloth, to interweave some kind of natural material from the get-go, right? So that we could walk around and do our thing, clothed, right?
Right.
So
Right.
it goes way, way back. So anyway, so just to tell a little bit more about myself, so I've written a book called The Creative Spiral,
The creative spiral.
the
Okay.
Mastering the Art of a Spirited Life, and that is a coaching guide that takes people through a variety of different processes when you're trying to cultivate and nurture your creativity, which really, your creativity is what gives you the opportunity to go into the unknown, right?
Right.
So creativity and courage just go hand in hand. And so I feel like I'm this amazing doula that gets to help people sort of really birth that creative courage within them.
Wow.
So that's a little bit about my background.
Well, when you
And
say, I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you, but I know so much about this. So I've never heard creativity and courage, those two words put together like that. That's fascinating.
well, let's talk about that for a second. So when you think about it, every innovation, every new thing, every
Right.
thing that we, look around in your world, everything that's been created, right, that didn't exist before, existed in somebody's mind, and they had to take the steps to bring that, to manifest that, to bring that into action. So they really had to go into the unknown. And so for any, to create for the birth, well, I wouldn't even say birth, I would say for the maturation of the compassionate male, because I think that it's already a birthed quality, right, in the world. But for that to mature, it takes courage. And building your creative muscles basically builds your courage and your strength, because you're constantly pressing yourself to go into the unknown, to explore, to discover, to experiment, to fail, to be resilient, to come back, to try, to do all of those things until you manifest, right? So creativity is really how we build our courage.
That's
in my way, my framework.
Yeah. Well, so tell me, when you, where all are you doing this? I mean, you're located. We got to stop there. So, where are you located?
Yeah. Yeah, right now I'm in San Diego, California.
Right. And this work that you're
I
doing.
am in the.
I lost you again.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're in San Diego, California. And so where all do you do this work?
Well, let's bring it back to the Women's Woven Voices project. I'll tell you in a minute where it all kind of, how it was conceived and sort of been nurtured. But it is an international art collaborative. So I conceived of the idea of doing this project about 3 years ago, and I'll tell you all about that. But let's jump into the project as it is now. There have been participants from about 5 different countries, and I'm actively working with people all over the world to contribute to this project. So let's just see, how did this come about? What is this? So the idea is, again, it's an international collaborative art project to promote the empowerment of women through writing, weaving, and sharing their stories. And why those 3 elements is because the writing represents self-reflection. And as you and I know from our compassionate integrity training, we need to start compassion by self-reflection. We really need to think about our own self and how we deal with challenges in our life, right? So that's an integral part of that basic training, right? So over the years, as a coach, I've always used writing or journaling as a way for self-reflection. So I offer, as a part of the project, journaling prompts. Like the first one that I like to throw out there is, what are some of the greatest achievements and successes or creations you've had in your life? And get people just starting from that place of, wow, I did this that I was very happy about. I did this and I did this, that kind of to get them into the space where, they acknowledge that they are a creator, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And then move on to like, what is some of the greatest challenges that you faced? And then they can download, the many, many challenges that people have that cover a wide range, right? And then I ask them to, think about what strengths they brought to those challenges, what tools they used, and then, I have questions like, what's the most fun thing? What makes you the most whole?
Yeah.
And so as people, get to write and reflect on that, they're just getting more in touch with basically their own creative power, because we just lose sight of it, right? We're just busy driving our cars. Well, not anymore. We're busy baking bread. And so sometimes people just lose sight of the creative power that they actually have. So, anyway, so the project has these three elements: the writing, the weaving, and the sharing. And as an artist, I know that when you actually take materials and you manipulate them with your hands in an art project, and weaving is a particularly, it's repetitive, it's meditative in a lot of ways,
Right.
it's very tactile. And when you are in the process of doing that kind of creating, we know from depth psychology that just opens up and gives us access to sort of our subconscious layers, our more intuitive self. People might call that your soul. It kind of opens you up to, if you want to talk about the right brain, the left brain, you're doing something that's not necessarily language oriented. It's symbolic, it's artistic, it's metaphorical. And all of those parts of us, come together with the writing, and those two together really give you a whole picture, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So that's why it's really important to have both those elements. And then the sharing of the stories.
Wow.
Now, there is this overarching idea in my project that I want women to feel empowered by sharing their stories. Okay.
Right.
And the way that came about, the project came about, is that let's see, we're in 2020 now. So yeah, in 2016 and 2017, I'm losing my days, my years. Back in 2017, I was living in Vancouver, Washington, and helped to produce an international women's event conference. And it was a day that was just focused on essentially, looking at women's accomplishments in the world, and then also acknowledging that there's what issues are still, out there for women that we really need to address, and their personal life and their professional life in relation to the planet. All of those, try to touch on everything. So for this conference day, we invited 6 women who were shining their light really brightly. They had written a book, maybe they had started an organization, they had, there was something that they were doing that was really yummy. And we were just like, whoa, you're cool. We like what you're doing. Would you come and just tell us your story? So, the caveat was no PowerPoint, production here. We don't want you to come in and teach us something. We want to know who you are. We want to know, what's your story? How did you become the author of this book, or the shiny bright light that you are right now? Which is as you know, is a really powerful thing, right?
Right.
So we didn't know what their stories were, but we just knew who they were. So we said, come tell your stories. Well, at the end of the day, the 6 women, 5 out of the 6 had included as, formative experiences in their life, sexual abuse.
Yes.
Several of them by their family members.
Yes.
By their fathers, by their grandfathers, by their uncles.
Yeah.
And although that wasn't what their whole story was about, they were, brave enough. I mean, actually kind of get chills, because they stood up in front of a room full of 300 women to share with them that, here I am, yes, I did write this book. Yes, I did do this, but here's the journey that I've gone through, and it included this. And it just struck me as an artist that I wanted to contribute to conversations around how to change this, situation. So at the end, the last speaker said, well, it seems like a theme has developed here. Would you, if you want to, 300 people in the room, if you want to stand up, if you've been touched by some kind of sexual abuse, and, play the room stood up, and it didn't necessarily mean that you had to have been beaten or raped, but, in some way that you were
right.
by gender abuse in some way,
Yes.
And I had an interesting experience. Oh, so, I just felt, okay, I got to contribute to this, the energy of compassion around this subject.
Yes.
So afterwards, I had conversations with women, telling them about what I had just experienced at this conference. And there were two things that really struck me. One was when I was talking to women in a safe and very comfortable way, many women, I would say, revealed to me that they had somehow had, a sexually violent experience in their lifetime, and they never told anyone.
Right.
Okay. And on the other hand, I would be talking to women who'd say, I don't know anyone who's ever been sexually abused.
Oh my.
So now we see, here we have people who have had this experience, and not that people need to go around shouting about that, but I mean, here you have people, a culture where, they didn't feel safe to either share that or even go for help or for guidance or for comfort or for change, right?
Right.
And then the other people over here just having their happy lives and not experiencing that, and actually kind of believing that, oh, that isn't going on, right? Nobody they ever know has ever talked about it, right?
Right.
So, that's how the project was born or conceived. And I had been a textile artist in Santa Barbara working with kids for years, and I had done this very simple little weaving where you have these little soda straws and you just go in and out, and you put it in your hand. It's cheap and it's simple, and we had done many projects with it, and I thought anybody in the world could do this.
Oh gosh, when I was a little kid, we had pot holders.
Yeah, you could, right. So this is very, very simple. So I put together a website, and on the website there's videos of me saying, here's how you put this together, and here's how you do it, and here's how here's some help for things to happen. And then I've essentially taught thousands of people how to do this from probably age 5 to 95.
Wow.
So I knew that anyone could do it, and I also knew that sitting and just doing this meditative thing can actually be a part of a healing process for people.
Sure.
So off we went. I had my daughters, my aunt, my cousin, and my friends do one, and just ask them to reflect on their lives and to weave a story cloth. And I know that listeners can't see what's behind me, but I'm gonna bring you up a little bit closer so that you can
yes,
so we can talk about it. But people embellish, so you can see people put little symbolic things onto their woven cloth. So just to be clear, each one of these was done by a different person.
Right.
And then I'm stitching them all together. Here you go. You can see this person is a golfer.
And so these all look like they're about the width of a belt and probably at least as long or longer. And each one of them has a unique set of colors and design and pieces woven into them, and all together, hanging on the wall together, is such a beautiful tapestry of color.
Exactly. So people, there's really no instructions about, there's no how-to there is how to weave it, but not what colors or anything to use. I encourage people, if you want it, how do you want to tell your story? And some people just grab yarn that they like and they just start weaving and reflecting, and it's just a completely intuitive process. Other people have kind of written out sort of a timeline, and I've had people say, well, I was born in Minnesota, so it starts out with white because that represents snow. And so when they are in front of their story cloth, they can say, so this is this, I was born in Minnesota, and this is white, and then the next thing is this, and these colors are my children, and this is my marriage, this is when my mother died, this is when this happened to me, and this was a very dark time in my life. And then after that are the light colors, because I was able to change it around. And so you really can use the art as a reframing process.
Yes, and there's not words. They're all symbols, and the colors, the symbolic nature of it. You know, what's interesting as you're talking about that, I guess it was 25 years ago, I was on a trip, a camping and a canoeing and rafting trip, and it was a very special time for me in my life. And I picked up a long stick, a driftwood, and I don't know what it was about it, but each day I carved something that represented what happened that day. And you know, that stick still stands in a corner of our kitchen.
Yeah.
It has a special meaning of that time and place. So I can relate from that vantage point. But what's to me so incredible is to see these all together.
Right.
The diversity, all of the totally different designs, but put together is just magnificent.
I'm so happy to hear you say that. So two of my hopes for the project were, one was that each individual who participated would have some kind of an experience. By reflecting on their life, they would touch base with who they are. One of the written mission statements I have is to foster a culture of self-knowledge that builds courage and fosters the sense of power in women everywhere to contribute to their communities in positive ways. So in order for us to really be compassionate to others, we really need to kind of find that power within ourselves, to be compassionate for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that, the process of doing this project helps that. And then the second thing is that it's really an art project. So then it comes to me, I stitch it together. I add a red fringe on the bottom of 3 out of every 4, which is a statistic that I had heard at one point of the World Health Organization saying that many women are affected by some kind of gender violence around the globe, which is completely unacceptable. But by putting the red fringe on and tying it all together, I love that you said, it's magnificence, it's diversity, the creativity, the power, the connection, that it speaks to. And so over the last couple of years, the tapestry has been at women's events, for example, at the Commission on the Status of Women and Girls symposium here in San Diego. It was on display, and we had some nice news coverage there. It's been at the University of San Diego for events, and the students there participated. In April, the health department had a sexual assault awareness month because that's such a huge issue on college campuses right now. So the tapestry became a part of that program. It was at the Visionary Summit in Sacramento last September. It's been at museums. It's been at the Women's Museum, and it's currently on display at an art museum in San Diego. We installed it, and about 4 days later, the museum closed. So it's 6 panels that are safely locked into the museum, and we're hoping that it'll be able to open soon. So.
Okay, so help me understand. So a woman does her weaving, and then she gives it to you.
Yes.
And then you put it together with the others?
Yes. So then I stick it together. Right. So each one, people mail them to me. I do workshops. And then, people gather them and then I stitch them together so that, they, as you can imagine, when, you see all of the things, there's metal things and glass things, there's things hanging off of them. Each panel gets very heavy.
Right.
So I put about 25 or so together to make about a 3.5 foot to 4 foot panel.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't stitch any more into that panel because I need to be able to fold it up to transport it.
Right.
And
Now,
then,
I'm sorry.
yeah,
Okay, so this panel here, was this a particular group of women that did it, or did these come from
these
everywhere?
come from all over the place. Yes.
Okay, okay. And so this is their voice being
Yes.
heard, bringing
Yes.
beauty to the world
Yes.
and awareness to the world, and
Yes.
them
And in the
standing up. Mhm.
yeah, and in the workshops that I do, Clay, last November, we had I had an incredible experience. We offered a workshop for a group of women who are refugees from Syria, Afghanistan, Iran, and Iraq. Yeah.
Mhm.
And they have now relocated. They're here in El Cajon, California, and they are creating a new life. And their children are in school, and they're learning, a new language. And we had a connection with them through the school because the parents, the moms, have a parent group. And so we
Right.
said we'd love to offer this workshop. And so we spent an entire day. We had a translator who was speaking both Arabic and Farsi
Oh gosh.
throughout the day. And we had 25 women who participated. And they learned how to do the weaving. We did some of the weaving. And then we broke into groups and we shared stories. And we got to hear some of their stories, which included, not just violence against women, but just violence against
Right.
violence
Right.
that was threatening their families, um, and then just their resilience, their hope, their just renewed energy around creating a world that's different for their children.
Hmm.
So all of that energy is in this, tapestry.
Right. That's fascinating. So, have you ever worked with men in any way doing this?
I have. So I've offered it to some mixed groups,
Uh-huh.
and the men were very, very interested and in tune.
Mhm.
I haven't done any workshops that are specifically for only men,
Sure.
and this is a collaboration. I hope we're birthing.
Maybe, perhaps so, yeah.
Um,
Well,
but I will tell you that I did. I was invited to a class that was 35 military veterans, all men.
yes. Uh-huh.
And I shared the project with them. And we basically just had conversation around it. And I went just completely with an open,
Yeah.
open heart and open mind. I don't know what they're going to say or think about it. And I was so impressed with just their interest in it, and also in how it could affect change and what
Mhm.
they could do to pass it on. It is called the Women's Woven Voices Project. And
Sure.
honestly, that comes from wanting to honor my own mother, who I felt was always wanting to, be able to have more of a voice in the world. But I feel that she sort of succumbed to a very unhappy, marriage, and to the sense of authority over herself. I think she was always struggling with just trying
Right.
to feel like she, had the power to say what it is that she wanted and thought.
To have a voice. To
Yeah,
have
have
a
a voice.
voice.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm thinking about these men that you presented to. First, it took a lot of courage to walk into that circle, especially the fact that they were all military
Or veterans. Yeah.
veterans, and uh, that that must have been really fascinating, perhaps a little bit frightening at the same time.
Well, the wonderful thing about it was is that it had the tapestry. So I mean, I didn't feel like it was about me,
Right.
So it was about the tapestry, and it was a fabulous experience, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. This whole topic of sexual abuse, it's just, first, it's incredibly tragic. Um, some of the work that I do in collaboration with an organization called Gender Equity and Reconciliation International,
Yeah.
I think you may know them.
Yes. Mhm.
Bringing men and women together for deep healing, and one of the first ahas or realizations that that begin to come out is Me Too, and the whole Me Too movement, and has brought that out. And it's incredible to me to begin to understand what percentage of men as young boys have gone through a similar. And in no way, is there any frame of reference for one person to compare theirs to another person?
Right.
But it's a common ground for people to meet and recognize that we're both wounded.
Right.
We're both wounded by the abuse that's occurred. We're both wounded by the patriarchal system that's pushed us down different paths and made us at times, adversaries. And it doesn't need to be that way. But that common ground that can be established once two people connect on a deep level is really invaluable.
I couldn't agree more. And um, as we've communicated to each other, the project in no way is set up to create any kind of dichotomy
Oh no.
or blame. It's just a vehicle, and the idea is really to promote open communication,
Yeah.
and healing and resilience and creativity and all of those, and compassion, basically.
Sure. Well, and what I see, what you're doing, that in helping women along to have their voice and so forth. I have a men's circle. It's exclusively men.
Yeah, yeah,
There's work that have, I can do my own work. I tend not to be a joiner. Like other guys, I tend not to trust other guys. So who do I connect with on a heart level on things that only guys can really connect with, or we need to speak to one-on-one. And
yeah.
so we get together and we learn that. We learn how to move from head to heart, and then learn to speak from the heart with one another in a non-judgmental and a safe environment. There's, no one's trying to fix anybody or call anybody out. And that's the work that we need to do so that we can raise our consciousness level so that we can then go to the next step, which is, how do men and women engage? How do we live better than the way our parents lived or what we see in the world right now? So I applaud the work that the women are doing to lift themselves, and I personally have the feeling that, and this is a big generalization, but that women tend to be a bit more conscious than men. And we guys are kind of a little bit lower, and I don't think it would be reasonable to expect the women to lower their consciousness level. We guys have got to up ours. Meet you where you are.
Well, I'm not going to jump in too much on that, except that yeah, the whole idea would be that as human beings, we all keep rising up into the consciousness level. And I have to say that I feel very encouraged by. I have three children in their 30s, and my son, I feel, is an incredibly compassionate and conscious male.
Mm.
Um, and my son-in-law as well. And I just see the way that they think, and the environment that they grew up in as being just so more open and just so different, really, than maybe where we are. I mean, I'm not sure
Right.
about. I mean, I'm 65 or whatever,
Yep.
and
I'm a year ahead of you.
my parents, that just very authoritarian kind of male culture,
Right.
that those men grew up in. And if I may, I'll tell a little personal story.
Yeah, please.
I hope this is going to be okay. But it's about my father-in-law, who was a very loving and wonderful man who's passed. He was a Marine.
Mm-hmm.
He was uh, uh, an authority, but an authority that had a very, loving hand.
Mm-hmm.
And yet in his own home, he would use sort of a language to his wife that was really shocking to me. So,
Mm-hmm.
if my mother-in-law forgot to put the salad dressing on the table or something, he'd say, you didn't put the salad dressing on the table. Am I going to have to come over there and smack you? And this was just kind of their banter.
Oh gosh.
And the whole family was so used to hearing it that it was just, and so he'd say things like, oh, I'm going to have to come over there and punch you or smack you, or, little things that, and coming in as the new member of the family, I was really shocked.
Mm-hmm.
And when we started having our children, I said to my husband, I know that y'all just take that, that, your dad would never do that.
Right.
He wasn't actually even threatening to do it. It was his language.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, would you talk to your dad? So one Sunday we sat down and my husband said, look, Dad, I know that, you were raised in a certain time and you have a certain culture, but times have changed, and abuse is not okay. And, his mom was so uncomfortable that we were having this conversation that she left. His sister was so uncomfortable. They thought we were accusing him of something terrible. We were just having a conversation.
Right.
And my husband handled it so beautifully. And he just said, we know what a loving man you are. We know what your relationship is. But when our children come over, these are the words they're hearing. I'm going to smack you. And we don't want them to hear that, So this man, again, who is this compassionate, loving person, listened to everything we said. And he was like, I guess I wasn't really thinking about what I was, that's how we've always talked, and we were like, and he made a conscious effort to change that language.
Mm-hmm.
And over the next, year and years, he really got what we were saying.
Wow.
It was a habit to use this kind of abusive language that was not serving anyone. And so it was like it seemed like a really small thing at the time to everybody else there. It was a really big thing for me because I just couldn't help to hear that. But
it was kind of like a
story, that.
Yeah. So he had a blind spot.
Yeah, he had a little blind spot, and it wasn't that he wasn't, loving. It was that, that was just kind of a holdover from, this other kind of culture and from the,
Yeah. It's interesting that tonight, I have our circle of men that gathers, and we have 25 or 30 every Monday night, different mix. And has continued on Zoom, since we've all gone in.
So glad. Yeah.
And our topic tonight happens to be blind spot. We all have a blind spot. And so it's interesting that you bring that up, and I really wanted to hear, how did he receive it, and did he, take it to heart and work to affect change? Sometimes just calling it out gently, just naming it.
Kudos to my husband, because he did such a beautiful job.
Yeah.
Honoring his dad as the loving person that he was. There was no accusation kind of or attack kind of feeling. It was like, hey, there's something that, is really important to us. And, imagine, our little 2-year-old hearing you say this. And of course he was like, oh, I'd never do that. I said, yes, but Dad, listen to those words.
Right.
And it was a beautiful thing to watch between those two men. And
I am so glad that you shared that.
To share that story in your blind spot circle.
Thank you. Wow, what a journey. Well, so thoughts about where men are. I mean, you were talking about the sons and how they are and the generational side of things. Where are we? Where are we going right now?
Well, so isn't that an interesting thing? Because, here I was telling a story about my husband talking to his father.
Right.
my son, I feel like he has just got so much, to offer. And oftentimes we think, the father of teaching the son, but
Right.
maybe a great thing would be, to have young men's groups that interact with older men's groups.
Oh, wow.
In other words, instead of having like the mentors be the older men mentoring the younger men, somehow find the young men to have conversation with the older men about these different issues, because I think that they grew up in a different world, where they were much.
Wow. That's incredible. I'm so glad that you said that, because, I'm always looking to reach quote down
Yes,
to
yes.
bring in the young fellas, and we get a few, but we tend to be older, mid 40s on
Uh-huh.
up.
Uh-huh.
And you just turned it around and made the young men the mentors. And that's a very powerful thought. I'm going to take that to heart and see where that goes. I
I love
love that.
that. Yeah, I think that could be a really good way to go.
My wheels are turning.
Oh,
Well,
I just,
gosh, it's fascinating that the work that you're doing and the people that you're affecting is just incredible. All based on an ancient art,
yes. Yeah.
and so I really appreciate that. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about that we need to delve
Well,
into?
I just feel like we could probably talk for days, but I,
Yes.
I just wanted to call out that, the one of the last calls that we were on, you had called attention to the compassionate male, and you said male specifically rather than men or man.
Right.
And I would even take it to the masculine, because because we're used to talking about the feminine and the masculine as
Right.
being qualities in each other. And so I think another topic, that we could talk about another time, but I'm just going to throw it out there, is that, as women become more courageous and feel their personal power, and uh, basically, are applying that power towards a patriarchal
Yes.
society, they're also tapping into and trying to weave together their feminine and their masculine qualities, and the masculine ability to push out, and control things and that sort of thing. So I feel like the work that you're doing, ultimately it's going to be for everyone, as is the work that
Right.
I'm doing. That I feel strongly that it's women's circles are good and men's circles are good, that we need that right now, and maybe in the future we won't. Maybe, I don't know, but I still feel like that's really good, because I think that men are men and women are women.
Right. Right.
At this,
Well.
but then the goal then would be to really cultivate that compassionate
Uh-huh.
masculine and compassionate feminine in a way that everybody accesses it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm so glad you picked up on what I said, because I just kind of commented and we moved on.
Yeah.
That I'm in search of the new compassionate male, implying the male energy,
Right. Right.
which transcends gender.
Yes.
And if I was in search of the new compassionate man, that's a charged word. It's got all kinds of baggage with it,
Yeah.
and it if at the very best it can go halfway to where we need to go. But yeah, so thank you
I,
for mentioning that.
yeah. Well, kudos for the work that you're doing, Clay, and thank you so much for inviting me to chat about this project, uh,
Well,
and just about how we as humans can affect a more compassionate world.
Brecia, thank you so very much, and I look forward to talking again, and I'll report back about the young men mentoring the older men.
I
I
would
love
love
that
to
thought.
hear about that. I would.
Okay, well, you have a great rest of your day. Thank you
Thank you
so
so
very
much,
much.
Clay. Thank you so much.